In the 2nd year of the reign of Ahasuerus the great king, on the 1st day of Nisan, Mordecai the son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish of the tribe of Benjamin, a Jew dwelling in the city Susa, a great man, serving in the king's palace, saw a vision. Now he was one of the captives whom Nebuchadnezzar king of Babylon had carried captive from Jerusalem with Jeconiah the king of Judah. This was his dream. Behold, voices and a noise, thunders and earthquake, tumult upon the earth. And, behold, 2 great serpents came out, both ready for conflict. A great voice came from them. Every nation was prepared for battle by their voice, even to fight against the nation of the just. Behold, a day of darkness and blackness, suffering and anguish, affliction and tumult upon the earth. And all the righteous nation was troubled, fearing their own afflictions. They prepared to die, and cried to God. Something like a great river from a little spring with much water came from their cry. Light in the sun arose, and the lowly were exalted, and devoured the honorable. Mordecai, who had seen this vision and what God desired to do, having arisen, kept it in his heart, and desired by all means to interpret it, even until night. Mordecai rested quietly in the palace with Gabbatha, and there the king's 2 chamberlains, eunuchs who guarded the palace. He heard their conversation and searched out their plans. He learned that they were preparing to lay hands on King Ahasuerus, and he informed the king concerning them. The king examined the 2 chamberlains. They confessed and were led away and executed. The king wrote these things for a record. Mordecai also wrote concerning these matters. The king commanded Mordecai to serve in the palace, and gave gifts for this service. The Haman the son of Hammedatha the Bauchian was honored in the sight of the king, and he endeavored to harm Mordecai and his people, because of the king's 2 chamberlains. And it came to pass after these things in the days of Ahasuerus, in those days when King Ahasuerus was on the throne in the city of Susa. In the 3rd year of his reign, he made a feast for his friends, for people from the rest of the nations, for the nobles of the Persians and Medes, and for the chief of the local governors. After this, after he had shown them the wealth of his kingdom and the abundant glory of his wealth during 180 days, when the days of the wedding feast were completed, the king made a banquet lasting 6 days for the people of the nations who were present in the city, in the court of the king's house, which was adorned with fine linen and flax on cords of fine linen and purple, fastened to golden and silver studs on pillars of white marble and stone. Here were golden and silver couches on a pavement of emerald stone, and of mother of pearl, and of white marble, with transparent coverings variously flowered, having roses arranged around it. Here were gold and silver cups, and a small cup of carbuncle set out, of the value of 30,000 talents, with abundant and sweet wine, which the king himself drank. This banquet was not according to the appointed law, but as the king desired to have it. He charged the stewards to perform his will and that of the company. Also Vashti the queen made a banquet for the women in the palace where King Ahasuerus lived. Now on the 7th day, the king, being merry, told Haman, Bazan, Thera, Beres, Zathol, Abatazar, and Tharaba, the 7 chamberlains, servants of King Ahasuerus, to bring in the queen to him, to enthrone her, and crown her with the diadem, and to show her to the princes, and her beauty to the nations, for she was beautiful. But Queen Vashti refused to come with the chamberlains, so the king was grieved and angered. And he said to his friends, This is what Vashti said. Therefore pronounce your legal judgment on this case. So Archelaus, Sarsatheus, and Malisar, the princes of the Persians and Medes, who were near the king, who sat chief in rank by the king, drew near to him, and reported to him according to the laws what it was proper to do to Queen Vashti, because she had not done the things commanded by the king through the chamberlains. And Memucan said to the king and to the princes, Queen Vashti has not wronged the king only, but also all the king's rulers and princes, for he has told them the words of the queen, and how she disobeyed the king, as she then refused to obey King Ahasuerus. So this day the other wives of the chiefs of the Persians and Medes, having heard what she said to the king, will dare in the same way to dishonor their husbands. If then it seems good to the king, let him make a royal decree, and let it be written according to the laws of the Medes and Persians, and let him not alter it. Don't allow the queen to come into him any more. Let the king give her royalty to a woman better than she. Let the law of the king which he will have made be widely proclaimed in his kingdom. Then all the women would give honor to their husbands, from the poor even to the rich. This advice pleased the king and the princes, and the king did as Memucan had said, and sent into all his kingdom through the several provinces, according to their language, so that men might be feared in their own houses. Chapter 2. After this, the king's anger was pacified, and he no more mentioned Vashti, bearing in mind what she had said, and how he had condemned her. And the servants of the king said, Let chaste, beautiful young virgins be sought for the king. Let the king appoint local governors in all the provinces of his kingdom, and let them select beautiful, chaste young ladies, and bring them to the city Susa, into the women's apartment. Let them be consigned to the king's chamberlain, the keeper of the women. Then let things for purification and other needs be given to them. Let the woman who pleases the king be queen instead of Vashti. This thing pleased the king, and he did so. Now there was a Jew in the city Susa, and his name was Mordecai, the son of Jairus, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, of the tribe of Benjamin. He had been brought as a prisoner from Jerusalem, whom Nebuchadnezzar king of Babylon had carried into captivity. He had a foster child, daughter of Amminadab his father's brother. Her name was Esther. When her parents died, he brought her up to womanhood as his own. This lady was beautiful, and because the king's ordinance was published, many ladies were gathered to the city of Susa under the hand of Haggai. And Esther was brought to Haggai, the keeper of the women. The lady pleased him, and she found favor in his sight. He hurried to give her the things for purification, her portion, and the 7 maidens appointed her out of the palace. He treated her and her maidens well in the women's apartment. But Esther didn't reveal her family or her kindred, for Mordecai had charged her not to tell. That Mordecai used to walk every day by the women's court to see what would become of Esther. Now this was the time for a virgin to go into the king when she had completed 12 months, for so are the days of purification fulfilled, 6 months while they are anointing themselves with oil of myrrh, and 6 months with spices and women's purifications. And then the lady goes into the king. The officer that he commands to do so will bring her to come in with him from the women's apartment to the king's chamber. She enters in the evening, and in the morning she departs to the second women's apartment, where Haggai the king's chamberlain is keeper of the women. She doesn't go into the king again unless she is called by name. And when the time was fulfilled for Esther the daughter of Amminadab, the brother of Mordecai's father, to go into the king, she neglected nothing which the chamberlain, the women's keeper, commanded, for Esther found grace in the sight of all who looked at her. So Esther went into King Ahasuerus in the 12th month, which is Adar, in the 7th year of his reign. The king loved Esther, and she found favor beyond all the other virgins. He put the queen's crown on her. The king made a banquet for all his friends and great men for 7 days, and he highly celebrated the marriage of Esther, and he granted a remission of taxes to those who were under his dominion. Meanwhile, Mordecai served in the courtyard. Now Esther had not revealed her country, for so Mordecai commanded her to fear God and perform his commandments as when she was with him. Esther didn't change her manner of life. 2 chamberlains of the king, the chiefs of the bodyguard, were grieved because Mordecai was promoted, and they sought to kill King Ahasuerus. And the matter was discovered by Mordecai, and he made it known to Esther, and she declared to the king the matter of the conspiracy. And the king examined the 2 chamberlains and hanged them. Then the king gave orders to make a note for a memorial in the royal library of the goodwill shown by Mordecai as a commendation. After this, King Ahasuerus highly honored Haman the son of Hammedatha, the Begin. He exalted him and set his seat above all his friends. All in the palace bowed down to him, for so the king had given orders to do, but Mordecai didn't bow down to him. And they in the king's palace said to Mordecai, Mordecai, why do you transgress the commands of the king? They questioned him daily, but he didn't listen to them. So they reported to Haman that Mordecai resisted the commands of the king, and Mordecai had shown to them that he was a Jew. When Haman understood that Mordecai didn't bow down to him, he was greatly enraged, and plotted to utterly destroy all the Jews who were under the rule of Ahasuerus. In the 12th year of the reign of Ahasuerus, Haman made a decision by casting lots by day and month, to kill the race of Mordecai in one day. The lot fell on the 14th day of the month of Adar. So he spoke to King Ahasuerus, saying, There is a nation scattered among the nations in all your kingdom, and their laws differ from all the other nations. They disobey the king's laws. It is not expedient for the king to tolerate them. If it seem good to the king, let him make a decree to destroy them, and I will remit into the king's treasury 10,000 talents of silver. So the king took off his ring and gave it into the hands of Haman to seal the decrees against the Jews. The king said to Haman, Keep the silver and treat the nation as you will. So the king's recorders were called in the 1st month on the 13th day, and they wrote as Haman commanded to the captains and governors in every province, from India even to Ethiopia, to 127 provinces, and to the rulers of the nations according to their languages, in the name of King Ahasuerus. The message was sent by couriers throughout the kingdom of Ahasuerus to utterly destroy the race of the Jews on the 1st day of the 12th month, which is Adar, and to plunder their goods. The following is the copy of the letter. From the great King Ahasuerus to the rulers and the governors under them of 127 provinces, from India even to Ethiopia, who hold authority under him, ruling over many nations and having obtained dominion over the whole world, I was determined to make the lives of my subjects continually tranquil, desiring both to maintain the kingdom quiet and orderly to its utmost limits, and to restore the peace desired by all men. When I had asked my counselors how this should be brought to pass, Haman, who excels in soundness of judgment among us, and has been manifestly well inclined without wavering and with unshaken fidelity, and had obtained the 2nd post in the kingdom, informed us that a certain ill-disposed people is scattered among all the tribes throughout the world, imposed in their law to every other nation, and continually neglecting the commands of the king, so that the united government blamelessly administered by us is not quietly established. Having then conceived that this nation is continually set in opposition to every man, introducing as a change a foreign code of laws, and injuriously plotting to accomplish the worst of evils against our interests, and against the happy establishment of the monarchy, we instruct you in the letter written by Haman, who is set over the public affairs and is our second governor, to destroy them all utterly with their wives and children by the swords of the enemies, without pitying or sparing any, on the 14th day of the 12th month Adar of the present year, that the people aforetime and now ill-disposed to us, having been violently consigned to death in one day, may hereafter secure to us continually a well-constituted and quiet state of affairs. Copies of the letters were published in every province, and an order was given to all the nations to be ready for that day. This business was hastened also in Susa. The king and Haman began to drink, but the city was confused.